Well, the obvious title is Come and See. Start off with a very, very short story. Mrs. Jones was reading a letter at breakfast. Suddenly she looked up suspiciously at her husband. "Mike," she said, "I've just received a letter from Mother saying she's not accepting our invitation to come and stay, as we do not appear to want her." "What does she mean by that, Mike?" "I told you to write and say that she was to come at her own convenience." "You did write that letter, didn't you?" Yes, I did," said Mike. "But I couldn't spell convenience, so I made it risk." Come and see. Invitation. No risk involved. So what did Philip do when he set out to follow Jesus? Did he go on an alpha course? No. Did he do all the work associated with a mission action plan so beloved of our great and fantastic diocese and the hierarchy in our diocese? Did he do a mission action plan? No. Did he join a church? No. Did he get baptized? Shock, horror. No, he didn't. He didn't. The first thing he did, according to John, was find his bro, Nathaniel, and tell him about Jesus. The first rule of being a disciple of Jesus, it's very simple, really. Very simple. It's summed up like this: tell other people about Jesus. And what's so lovely, I think, is that Philip didn't have any great learning about him, and yet he was really effective in being an evangelist for Jesus. So often we think we can't tell other people about Jesus because we don't know enough, or we don't know our Bibles well enough, but none of that matters. We don't need to be theologians to be effective. The last vicar of Holy Trinity Brompton, before Nicky Gumbel took over, Sandy Miller, who's now a bishop, famously said the following: "We empty our church by degrees." Think about it. I've got 5, so I know about it. We empty our church by degrees. We do a big thing about academic qualifications. We do a big thing about theology degrees, etc., etc. The diocese does a big thing in laying on course after course after course after course after course, etc., etc., etc. And my response to all that is, great, but please don't include me. We just need to be passionate for Jesus, and he will do the rest. We also need to keep on going despite the knocks. Nathaniel's response to Philip isn't particularly encouraging, is it? Can anything good come out of Nazareth? Can anything good come out of Oldham? Can anything good come out of Laughton, Thurcroft, Molby? Philip had been running over to Nathaniel. He was passionate about sharing the good news about Jesus, only to be met with a cynical response. Sometimes when we tell people about Jesus, we're met with cynicism or rudeness or apathy. I mean, I can remember back in the day, many years ago now, and I've told you this story before, when I was a student at Sheffield University and we went round door knocking, trying to share our Christian faith, and I was met with various responses, one of which was a bucket of cold water thrown all over me. Other responses were, shall we say, gratuitous swear words, and very rarely was it an invitation to come in and sit down and let's talk. Matter of fact, the best conversation I remember was sitting down and talking with 2 Muslims at a university hall of residence, and they were sharing about their faith, Islam, and they listened to what I had to share about Christianity. So when we're met with that kind of cynicism, rudeness or apathy, it can be discouraging, it can knock our self-confidence. But when it happened to Philip, he didn't get into some theological debate about the merits of Nazareth as a geographical region or its place within the salvation history of Israel or anything like that. He just kept it really, really simple. He just said to Nathanael, come and see this great bloke. And so when it comes to evangelism, that's all we need to keep saying, come and see. Now, I personally don't think it's going to be too long before the vaccinations will start to make a significant impact in the freedom that we have, or we'll get back to a sense of normality. It takes some time. And so we can work on this aspect of come and see, build up our courage, as it were, to invite people to come and see and meet with the living God in this place. We don't have to get involved in heavy theological debates. It's just a simple invitation, just come and see and let God do the rest. So this is a seemingly dead simple passage, a lovely story about the calling of Philip and Nathanael. But if you look underneath, it's full to the brim with a deep teaching about the nature of discipleship. We, and many traditional religions or established religions, can really complicate things and make it a list of do's and don'ts about discipleship. About having to read this, do that, go on that course, attend this course, etc., etc., etc. But it's a lot simpler than that. And after all, we don't choose God at all. He chooses us. We're called by him, and we're called by him for one thing, to tell others about the good news of Jesus. Each one of us here this morning has our own personal story to tell, which will resonate with people that we come into contact with. We're not to be discouraged by any negative response we might get from others, but trust that an encounter with God will be life-changing for them as well. So we're called into a life of peace and blessing with God. Jesus sees us. He sees us as we are. He knows everything about us. He understands our deepest needs. And if we follow him, as he says to Nathanael, we will, the promise is, see heaven opened. Jesus is indeed a saviour to be followed. And it's a lifetime's work for us to live out the two simple instructions. Follow me, come and see. Finally, on one sunny Saturday afternoon, two young church members, priming themselves up for the next Alpha course, were going around door to door inviting people to come to that course. Come and see, they were saying. And when they knocked on one door, it was immediately clear to the woman who answered that she wasn't best pleased to see them. She told them in no uncertain terms that she didn't want to hear their message, the simple invitation at all. And before they could say anything more, similar to my experience, she slammed the door in their faces. But to her surprise, the door didn't close. In fact, it bounced back open again. She tried again, really putting her back in it, going bang like that. But then, same result, the door bounced straight back again. And convinced that these two younger people were sticking the foot in her door, she reared back to give it a real slam that would teach them a lesson. And then just then, one of the people said quietly, before you do that again, you really need to move your cat. So be careful of cats when you next invite somebody to come and see. And hopefully it won't be too long before we can invite people to come and see. Amen.